Hello everyone and welcome to the third breakout session of the Academic Libraries North Conference. Before we get started, I'm just going to run through some housekeeping. If you've got any questions during our two presentations that we have for you this morning, please add them to the Q&A tab in the chat box that you can see next to your screen in Hubelo. No questions can be taken verbally, but those questions that you add to the chat box will be put to our presenters. The whole of this session is being recorded. You can turn captions on yourselves if you wish by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your stream window. We ask all delegates to abide by the code of conduct. This can be accessed via the delegate brochure on the ALN website and also via the notifications. I'm just going to start by introducing the first of our two speakers today, who both come from the University of Manchester. And first of all, we have Phil Reed talking about active staff inductions for a specialist library support service. Over to you, Phil.
Thank you very much, Zelda, and hello everyone. If it looks like I've got tears in my eyes, it's because I've had too many wasabi peas. It's nothing to do with the current news going on. So I'm going to talk to you today about active staff inductions for a specialist library support service, and I shall share my screen, my slides with you now. I've popped in a few little warm-up questions in the chat here that you should be able to see. Hopefully anyone who's joined after I entered the questions can still see them. So there's 4 areas of library inquiry support, and if you just put a thumbs up next to any that you do. So they are for referencing support, for copyright inquiries, advanced searching and systematic reviews, so that's medical databases and things like that, and business and financial databases. And we'll just see which area more of you support than any other. And that will be interesting to me. And if you can also get a copy of these slides. There's a link on the screen as well. And we'll share that again at the end. So let's see, next slide. So what I've been doing is I've worked on a competency and induction framework for staff in our specialist library support team, which we call SLS, here at the University of Manchester Library. I'm going to talk to you today about the context of where we've put this in and why I've done it with an example of an excerpt of the framework. And then I'll talk about why I've done it and some impact that it's had and how it might be interesting to you at your institutions. I will touch on how this is part of a 3-phase bigger idea. And then we'll have an activity, which is something you can do after the session, but I'll get you started here today and then we'll wrap up. So our Specialist Library Support Service was launched in September in 2018 within our Teaching, Learning and Students division at the University of Manchester. So we don't have subject-based areas, we have functional-based areas within Manchester. And I think that's quite common these days for a lot of institutions. And within our Specialist Library Support Service, we have the areas you can see in my chat box. So we have copyright guidance, business data, referencing support, and advanced searching and systematic reviews. So these have a shared governance across them all, and there's a lot of overlap, but there's also specialisms within each area, and they are all run together by what I'm showing as the dark cog in the middle. And if you'll allow me to have this, I think gimmick is probably the right word, we all work together really nicely. So I'll start to talk about what I've done, where this has come from. I've taken an interpretation of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Development, their paper titled Competence and Competency Frameworks, and I've applied it to the roles and requirements within our team in a way that I think will be transferable to other people's teams in other places too. So I listed out the responsibilities for a baseline that goes across the team, and then there are additional columns for each of the areas. So for each of the business and referencing and so on areas. So these will show additional requirements for each person. When somebody joins our SLS team, they would know which area of specialism they're being asked to help with or to learn to do if they don't already know. and we're not included in scope in here is the service expert. So my expertise is in business and financial databases. So I lead the business area, but we have, that was too much to include in this framework model here. And the competency types you can see on the screen are from the framework paper. I started doing this in a postgraduate certificate of higher education that I began to study a few years ago. And that's where a lot of this work came in. So the framework itself, I'll give you a simplified version here. We have our baseline column, additional columns for each area. And then we have rows, which are aspects of the service. You'll see examples on the next slide. And each cell of the table lists tasks or competencies or knowledge that are for that area. And these can be grouped together, and we can have multiple sheets of these in multiple topics. And we have 4 topics I've investigated across the team for us, which are inquiries, training and development, and that means student training, not our own, liaison, and resources and subscriptions. So I've slightly simplified here, but the rows, the aspects are general tickets, appointments, delivering workshops, talking to e-resources, joining a mailing list, or more specifically about how EndNote works or how Bloomberg works. I'll give you an example of a bit more detail, and I'll give you a link later on to read this more carefully in your own time as well. So we have, I'll just choose a little bit of it to talk about here. In the baseline, in the inquiry service in general, we expect everyone to be able to receive, triage and refer inquiries. But additionally, if you do referencing, you will need to have an understanding of referencing software, including EndNote and Mendeley to some extent. And another bit here in the baseline is you would expect people to be able to follow the inquiries guidance document, which means that we have a document that explains how our inquiry service works and how we operate, but that's too much detail for the framework. We just say there is another document here, and this is what it's called. You can go and find it later. We have separate rows for how we answer tickets and how we answer chats and several others. And then what happens after that is every 12 months, I think, we would take somebody who's joining the team to go through with the lead of that area. So in this case, it was a business one, and me so far. And we've taken each aspect of the service, put them in there, one on a list, and we expect people to complete 2 columns together in these 3 people. So we'll have an actions column and priorities. So actions will be very much things to do rather than things to know or have. So if I pick one here, we would say you could practice using a business LibGuide. You could say that you would be signing up to assist on a session. And if I give you a second slide here, we've got examples from different service areas. So this is somebody who did advanced searching and copyright. So it might be that they have to proactively practice more of these inquiries. They have to arrange appointments with the service lead mentoring them. So they wouldn't be doing that on their own initially. So we review this after 12 months and throughout the session as well. And we give the priority as a red, amber, green, RAG status, 1, 2, or 3. So in this form here, 1 is the highest priority. And there's quite a few things that somebody joining might not need to know, but that depends on the individual. The responsibility is still on the individual to make sure that this is what they need to do and to make sure that they're following it, but it's not on them alone. So why did I do this? For years, we've had complaints from staff joining our service that there is no clear path for them to learn what is required of them. The approach of shadowing or observing and then delivering a workshop isn't adequate development opportunities. And we've had similar complaints from people leading various areas that people joining their teams don't have expertise in that specialist area. So what happens now is that people joining are working on across multiple different responsibilities across the library, and we don't have the same immersion as working on one thing alone. So when I joined about 10 years ago, I was working just on business data, and I had a lot of focus and opportunity to learn all these resources, which I didn't know before. That's not how we work anymore. We have more demands on our time, and we can do lots of extra different things, but something that really fell down was in order to have the time and the structure to know, okay, I'm going to spend an hour on this week or this month. And then by the time that comes around again, you might have forgotten what you're doing or not have the traction. Or this is really where the framework has come in. So we've had, these are the stakeholders here, and I would say that it's been beneficial to both of these parties. I've seen it, and I've had good feedback from running this service in this way. I took the local academic culture and reflective practice module in my PG Cert course as well. And in part of my assignment, I did some practitioner research, data collection and reflection, and that led towards developing this, this approach. So I've got a bit more theory and references, which are in the notes to the slide if you download the slides later. We've also involved managers throughout this process too. So we are hoping that, and we have seen that it's improved development requirements for the staff and for managers. It gives managers a better view overall of what the service does and how it works. It's helping colleagues to feel more confident, and the confidence was really a bigger part of this than I'd expected. So not just knowing what to do, but saying, oh yes, this is the right thing to do, I'm doing it correctly, and it's okay. Everyone seems to have some experience of imposter syndrome from time to time, including myself, and I think maybe that's universal. So we are helping people to feel more engaged, and hopefully it means retainment of newer staff too. So I've got conversations with other people in Manchester who are interested in taking this to their teams, and a few other institutions as well, following when I spoke at the Business Librarians Conference about this last week, and maybe some of you guys too. So I'll be happy to talk to people afterwards. So I'm monitoring the effectiveness of this framework, the idea that we'll continually improve it. The points within each service area, the specific details, we will check these as and when they change, or perhaps every 12 months. And so make sure that when new staff join in, or when we review someone after 12 months, that we've got the latest plans. So I said there were 3 phases. All of this forms phase 1. So we set up the competency framework, and we get people to create personal action plans, which do work in conjunction with their PDRs or whatever their other induction models is too. I'm still working on how to make that a little bit smoother. Phase 2 is a series of train the trainer sessions. So one thing I said was that somebody might spend a bit of time on something, and we can't just have them observe and expect them to be able to deliver something as well, because there's a lot more questions come in. So if you're helping a really specialist database, then you want to be a few steps ahead of the people you are helping at very least. So in the series of these train the trainer sessions that I've run for the business area, and I'll show you this on the next slide in a moment, I'm getting people a bit ahead of where the students will be. And so they help understand the context of what they're learning and why they're learning it too. And I do this on a blog that's, I type the blog while I'm doing the teaching the session a little bit, and then publish it the next day. And it's been really useful resource for people to come back to as they're working on the homework I set them. Phase 3 is my target, to be able to let the new learners in the team to contribute to our program of open educational resources. So this goes back into the wider community and profession. So there is a link here as well, and a QR code for this particular staff blog. So when I do these trainer sessions about every 2 weeks for the business area, I will go through week by week a particular aspect of the service that I know that they will need to help students with. So this might be in addition to our online resources, or actually to help them understand what those online resources cover. So I've got the one on this screen at the moment is Boardex, which is a board of directors remuneration networking database that's a bit hairy to use. So I'm helping people to explain what it is and why they're using it, using the support that's available from the vendors, but also adding to that, and particularly adding on where we have things that run across multiple vendors. That's where I think our service really adds a lot, where these things are used together. And then I will set them a task for collaborative learning, and it's all works with our overall pedagogical approach of constructivism, and I give them opportunities to work together and then come back the next session to share with me what they've discovered, and I'll talk them through, and we'll have a conversation about these things and find out what they need to learn next. So congratulations, you're joining our team, maybe for a few minutes while you do the activity, which you can do after this session, but you can download the files now, and we'll put the links in the chat as well if they're not already there. I'm sorry, I haven't been monitoring the Hubilo chat. So there are 2 parts, or optionally 3 if you wish. So the first part is to have a sample of our induction framework. So that is 3 columns, the baseline, referencing, and business data areas, and all the rows as they were last month for Manchester. So that will be all the inquiries, all the training and development, all the liaison, and all the resources and subscriptions. And this is an example of how we populated this framework. Part 2 is where you will begin to complete your own action plan as if you're joining our service. And you can choose if you want referencing or business data. And then there are slightly different approach to here, and I would suggest choose the one that is closer to your field of work. And of course, it is written for Manchester, so some of the terminology might not be that clear, but I think a lot of it is understandable enough that you can get something out of this exercise. So we'll put those links back on again later. And here is a completed example of part of a referencing personalized action plan. And this is another genuine one that we've used from somebody just last month. And they were saying what we worked on for them is that they had to read through common past inquiries that were flagged as referencing in some way, and proactively take on more when someone says, oh, can I have help with this? But the person learning has to put their hand up more figuratively. And same with chats that come in, and they can arrange appointments with students with a mentor from the other person in the team. So this is all part of their steps towards becoming a more developed member of the team. So to wrap up, we have large complex teams, so we need structured support for development. We have now got a framework that helps define the learning, and it gives managers and staff an overview of what we all do. It helps new staff to where they need more active input from experienced staff, but still keeping the responsibility on the new person, but also shared across the team. We recognise that there are many library skills and knowledge that's not available from anywhere other than within the team. You can't always send somebody on a course to cover everything, how your team works, because every library is different. And the next steps, I'd like to ask you if you'd consider implementing something like this in your institutions, or how would you change it?
Thanks, Phil. That was great and really, really interesting. If anyone's got any questions for Phil, you can put them into the chat so that we can have a look at them. I can see there's one comment at the moment saying that it just looked like a really useful way to develop new starters, and I think that a lot of people would agree with that. But if there's no questions, then we'll move on to our next presentation, but you haven't missed your opportunity. If questions do occur to you whilst the next speaker is talking, we can happily take those at the end, no problem at all. Sometimes people need a bit longer. Oh, there is a question, I think, actually, just as I say that.
I can see a question that says, who was involved in the developing the list of competencies? Shall I answer that one now?
Yeah, do please.
Okay, so I had a meeting with the service leads of each of those 4 areas, so for referencing and copyright and so on, and so each time we added a bit to that framework, but initially I built on it with just 1 or 2 other people who do a lot of other inquiry work within the team, who had a good idea about, and we refined it a bit. We threw it back and forth in a couple of meetings, but it's yeah, it was collaborative.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you. Thanks, Phil, and thanks for your presentation. We'll move on to our second presentation now, which is Frances Murphy from the University of Manchester, and her presentation, Have you ever thought about working in a library, addressing barriers to inclusion in the recruitment process? So over to you, Frances, thank you.
Hello, yes, just bear with me 1 moment while I share my presentation for you. Okay, can everybody see that, yeah?
Yeah. No, I can't see it.
Oh, hang on, sorry.
It's okay.
Oh, let me just exit out. There we go. Can you see that now?
Yeah, you just need to put it into presentation mode. Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, let me go back to my first slide. Sorry about that. I'm using 2 screens today and I'm not proficient with it, so bear with me. I also need to apologise. My colleague Paul Rouse, who wanted to be here, is unwell with COVID at the moment, so it's just me, and I've tried to take on his slides, so bear with me. Yeah, so I'm Frances from the University of Manchester. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about an initiative we put into place in 2020 to try and attract more diverse candidates to our customer service roles. So this is the order of running for today. Why is recruitment important in working towards a diverse and inclusive team? Why did we want to address this in our team specifically? What we did, if it worked, and what we do next. So first of all, why is recruitment important in working towards a diverse and inclusive team? So this might seem an obvious thing to say, but if you haven't already got a diverse and inclusive team, then you need new people. It doesn't just happen overnight. And we're aware that recruitment is just one element in the employee life cycle. And diversity really needs to be embedded into the whole of that life cycle. But this was us trying to focus on just one element that we thought was important to kind of springboard that and hopefully make a positive impact. So recruitment is often the first point of contact for new starters. And we need to put our best foot forward just as much as they do. We need to impress them as well as them impressing us. Representation at this stage is crucial. Potential employees need to be able to see themselves and people like them thriving and working in a team like yours. So that's why recruitment plays such a valuable part in this kind of area. So why did we want to address recruitment in our team specifically? So at the end of 2020, I believe it was, we found ourselves needing to hire a large number of candidates for various customer services roles, particularly customer services advisor and customer services coordinator. And we kind of saw this as an opportunity to try and attract a more diverse selection of people, get the best candidates, rather than just doing the same thing that we'd done over and over again. Because it was such a large number of people that we needed to hire, we thought this is a great opportunity to kind of inject a lot of diversity into our team and get really great candidates from a broad spectrum of backgrounds. So university has an increasingly diverse student body, and this is really relevant in Manchester, but across the board when it comes to students, which is fantastic. And having a frontline team that reflects that can only be a good thing. Just thinking back to the pandemic, for example, when we reopened the university library, our frontline service staff were probably the only people that students had face-to-face interaction with on a regular basis. And seeing people that you can relate to and that you have confidence in is really, really important in a difficult time like that, but at all times as well. So it's crucial. We felt that our roles were attracting quite a narrow range of candidates. So I think when you speak to people, people have they have an idea in their head about what a library employee looks like. And we really wanted to kind of spread our wings from that a little bit and diversify our candidates. We wanted to encourage people with maybe little or no library experience, but who have otherwise, who would have otherwise applied. But they had the skills and experiences maybe from a different aspect of their life that we thought would benefit from our team. But maybe they thought, oh, I don't have the experience for that. I don't have the background in that. It's not for me. So we really wanted to take away from that a little bit and say, no, we value the experiences that you have. Please come and apply. So what did we do? We tried something new. We created what we called open information sessions. So this is a photo, it's a little bit of a squashed photo, sorry about that, but this is a photograph of the session that we created. And yeah, it's called an open information session. And we ran this in the event space in our main library building on the ground floor. And it kind of puts together a collection of different information, videos, lots of different bits of information about the role itself, about the department, about the university more widely, its values, lots of different things that we thought would be really interesting for candidates and to show how diverse we wanted this role to be. I'll just run through briefly each section here. So first part here on the left, I'll come back to in a moment. That's a video showing about what it looked like to do the job. Second section here, if Paul were here, he would say this is the boring stats bit. But I actually think it's really interesting. This was a chart that was created and put on the wall. It's such a great visual representation. It shows data and stats on inquiries from different channels such as chat, face-to-face, telephone, etc. In different times of the year and different sites that we work in. So it shows the demand on our service and how it varies basically, which was really interesting. The third section here was another video and some display boards, which showed the different sites and locations we would be expecting people to work in. And this was really useful, I think, because a couple of our sites, including, for example, the ALN Learning Commons, they're not what you would think of as traditional library buildings. The Learning Commons doesn't have any books, for example. It's just a learning space. And so we really wanted to show it's not just books. It's not just what you think of as a traditional library job. There's more to it than that. And we wanted to show the different areas that people would be working in, what they look like. Next section over here on the right was character traits that we were looking for from a customer service professional. So this was a real focus on qualities, not qualifications. So a lot of people we thought would be put off by, if we requested to have specific library qualifications, for example, which are not necessarily that relevant to a customer services role. There are other things that you need. So good listening, communication, flexibility, reliability, all these things, you can get them through a variety of different walks of life, not just through a specific educational path, for example. And the next section over here was showing our customer base. So this is showing how broad that base is, the different kinds of people that we serve. So academics, undergrads, postgrads, researchers, members of the public, members of staff, etc. So it's really, really broad, and showing how important it is for us to be just as diverse and just as broad as the customers that we serve. Final section here in the middle is the library's 2030 vision. So this is put together to demonstrate where the library sees itself by 2030. It discusses the kind of impact it wants to have locally, nationally, and internationally. And it also had a real focus on equality, diversity, that kind of thing as well. So we thought it would be interesting for people to look at that and see the forward-thinking nature of the library that we work for. So this next section, which I said I'd come back to, don't worry, there isn't any sound, by the way, so you're not missing any sound here. This was a video put together by myself and a few colleagues that shows what it looks like on the ground to be doing the job day to day. So the tasks that you might be carrying out, such as pick from shelf here, for example, chat, that kind of thing. And it was a very visual way to demonstrate what it actually looked like by real people doing that real job. It was also a bit meta because putting together this video was part of the job at the time. So that was interesting to show that as well. The next video we included was helping to, it was Paul put together to help break down some of the elements in the person specification and the job description. So he wanted to demystify the application process a little bit, show that there's more than one way to answer the questions, and more than one way to demonstrate that you have the skills and experience relevant. We didn't give away the answers, don't worry. We just kind of demonstrating what we were looking for and how you could show that. It was we got really good feedback from this video. That was a really useful, practical element of the session that people took a lot of information away from. So that was really positive. The final section, Paul gave me a brief to kind of come up with something that explicitly demonstrated our dedication to equality and diversity. Considering that these sessions were open sessions, we wanted to make it really clear that that is a really valuable and important aspect of the job and of the university more widely. So I put together this kind of equality and diversity wonder wall, and I put it together left to right to help kind of ease of reading and things like that. So over on the left-hand side here, that's the EDI statement from the university as a whole, show that, you know, it's taken seriously from the very top down. I've lost my mouse, sorry. There we go. And then moving over, this is showing that it's not just words. So awards and commitments that the university have made to diversity. So that's including things like Disability Confident Employer, Athena Swan charters, those kinds of things. And then the next section along is over here. This is something that I thought was really interesting to include and valuable to include, is to show how this filtered down into staff themselves. So these are groups and networks across the university, not just in the library, that offer a place for people to find like-minded individuals, feel included as a person, not just as an employee. And this is a stripped down version as well. There are so many, it's fantastic. There are so many great groups to get involved in, and a lot of them are really, really active and supportive as well. So we wanted to highlight that no matter what background you come from, you can find somewhere here that you'll be with like-minded individuals. And then the final section over on the right-hand side here was to kind of highlight how this was implemented in the library as well. So there's resources here that I've highlighted from eScholar that provide content for BAME individuals. There's also made reference to the Library Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Working Group. So this group kind of puts into practice all the words and the theories and kind of filters that down into day-to-day actions and recommendations for the library. I've also made reference here to the amazing work that the Ahmed Iqbal Ullah Race Relations Centre carry out. This is an archive which kind of archives the stories of people from minoritized ethnicities in Manchester through oral history projects, events, exhibitions, and school and college outreach. The work that they do is amazing, and it's something that we're really, really proud of. So that's an element that I wanted to highlight as well. And so the really important bit, did it work? So we used feedback forms at the event, but we also collected verbal and written feedback from people appointed to positions who had attended these sessions. We wanted to know what their experience was and if it had changed their minds about applying, for example. I'm not going to read all of these out. You're welcome to read over them again when the slides are published, but I just wanted to borrow on a couple of things that we found really valuable and important to relay back. So there's a running theme here that, like I've said, people felt like they have the skills and experience required to apply for a role in a library. And after coming to this session, kind of was alleviated a little bit, which is fantastic to hear, because that's exactly what we wanted. We really wanted people to feel like their experiences were valued and they had something to give. I also think it's interesting to note here the reference to the different formats included. So we really tried to have a lot of different formats: video, text, images, people there to speak to who were doing the job. And that was really well received as well, because people could dip in and out and go to the format that spoke to them. We also really tried to take into account that everything we had was height accessible for people who were wheelchair users, for example, that all the text was large and readable, things like that, that would just make accessibility that little bit easier. One comment that we did have that I think was interesting was a member of the public who came in and accessed the session said that we had 3 different videos running at the time. And they were neurodiverse, and they expressed to us that was a little bit overstimulating. They found that a bit challenging. So we went back and we changed it, and we had just the video that I showed you earlier where Paul was going through the job specification. We had that one just with sound and the others just with visuals, so that it was a bit kind of tampered down, and that was better received afterwards. So again, Paul would say this is another boring stats bit. I think it's really valuable to kind of take stock of success, but also areas to improve. So fantastic to see percentage of disabled candidates was higher, and the percentage of candidates under 20 and over 60 doubled, which was brilliant. Applicants from the LGBTQIA+ community increased. But we did notice there's still work to be done, particularly in the areas of gender and ethnicity. So those are things that we really need to take into consideration going forward. But these stats are really encouraging, but it's valuable to say the work's never been completely done. We still need to make progress here. So what do we do next? This is, Paul was going to say, is a bit of a cheat. He wanted to throw this over to you. No doubt in your teams and your areas, you find there will be challenges, whether they're similar challenges or different challenges, when it comes to recruiting diverse candidates. So we wanted you to go away and to think about what those challenges are and consider maybe how you could address them. If you've done anything in the past that's worked, that would be brilliant. I would love to hear about it. If you have any ideas or thoughts, again, love to hear those as well. But I think it's really important, like we said, to focus on this element of recruitment, because that really sets the stage for that employee going forward into the rest of their employee life cycle with your team and with your institution. So it really needs to be a great opening moment for them in terms of diversity and inclusion. So that's all from me. If you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them. If you have specific questions about the recruitment process after this, Paul would be the person for that. But if you leave me your details, I can pass that on, and he would be more than willing to answer any questions. I've not put his details down on here because I haven't had the chance to ask him if that would be okay, but I'm sure it would be. So if you want to speak to me or Paul at all, feel free to email me. It's francis.murphy@manchester.ac.uk. Or you can contact me on LinkedIn as well. I'm more than happy to hear suggestions, questions, anything like that. And if I can't answer it myself, I will pass you on to Paul, who is kind of the fountain of knowledge in this area. So yeah, that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Francis. Do you want to stop sharing your screen now? That's great. We've had a couple of questions. Yeah, I know this is a topic that really resonates with people because it's something that a lot of people are trying to tackle at the moment. So the first question we've got is from Catherine Davison-Brown, which is, how does this work for when you don't have the larger number of roles to recruit to? For example, if you've only got 2 or 3 different roles?
Yeah, it's a really good question. For the customer services coordinator role, we actually had 1 role to appoint for, but we still did it. We wanted to attract as many people as possible. I think for the CSA role, we had I can't remember exactly how many it was, but it was hundreds of applicants to go through, and for the coordinator role, several as well. But I didn't think that would be a bad thing, really. I think even if you've got 1 or 2 roles to fill, you want to fill them with the best candidates. And so even when we did it for the single role that we had for the coordinator role, we still got really great feedback from it. And people who had transferable skills, but maybe not in a library environment, fed back that it was great. So I'd still encourage doing something like this, even if it's only 1 or 2 roles. It just so happened that at that time we had quite a number to fill, and it gave us a really good opportunity.
Okay, yeah. Katie Winter asks, after saying this is fantastic work, thanks for sharing, she says, did you have any kind of online version for people not able to come in person?
Yes, that's one thing that Paul was going to discuss that I have forgotten to mention, so apologies. Yes, we did do a live online one as well on Zoom. I think we did 4 in-person sessions and 2, or maybe it was 4 of each. I'll have to double check with Paul, but we did do online versions as well. We showed all the videos. We had as much of the content as we could kind of shared screen instead of in person. But a lot of it broke down into kind of question and answers as well, because people really wanted to speak to people in the online ones. I think we had really good feedback about the online ones, because people at that point, people might not have been so confident coming into the library in person because COVID was still an issue. So it was important that we had, from an accessibility point of view as well, it was important that we had kind of 2 different areas that people could engage with. So yes, we did do an online version, and it was just a little bit different in format, but it still worked well.
Excellent. Let me just look. Sarah Monk says, how were people made aware of the open information session?
Yeah, so we published it on all the regular kind of job pages, Indeed and all that kind of stuff. But we also did a social media campaign about it. So it was all over the social media, and published it kind of really widely just to try and spread the word, internally and externally as well. So yeah, it was anywhere we could publish it, we did, basically.
Excellent. And one final question from Laura Bowick, who says, was there an increase in the number of applicants from a BAME background following the open information session?
No, I believe it was a slight decrease, which is why that disparity is a bit concerning for us. Like I said, in terms of gender and ethnicity, there's still a lot of work to be done there. And I really wish that we could have got more feedback about why that was. But it's something that we're really looking into, because unfortunately that decreased slightly. But hopefully, if we keep tweaking, keep working on it, we can change that.
Okay. That is a shame, but it's an ongoing process, isn't it?
It's a shame as well, because our team is really diverse now as well. So it's kind of looking at what's the disconnect between that. So yeah, it's a shame, unfortunately, but hopefully it's something that we can improve.
We've got one last, well, I keep saying one last, so I'll stop saying that. But another question has come in from Siobhan Haim, who says, for more specialist roles, how would you encourage people to visit in the first place, or make those technical skills accessible, as people may be less likely to even consider themselves for these roles?
Yeah, I think the only real specialism that I think you would need, because we were doing it from a customer services perspective, so the only kind of above and beyond skills we were asking for was when we were asking for the coordinator role. People needed experience of people management and coordinating teams and that kind of thing. But in terms of special skills and specialised experience, we really didn't request it. It's not something, we really wanted to open it up and say any experience that you have is valuable. So for example, one thing that we noticed, people prior to this, people will have a lot of library experience, and they knew things like the Dewey Decimal System, for example, which maybe we don't think is a special skill, but it is. And now we've kind of gone the other way. So with the people that we've been recruited after this, we've had to do extra training into how to demystify the Dewey Decimal System and how to work with that, for example. But that's not been a barrier. It's actually been really valuable. So I think for specialized roles, there might be, you would have to kind of change the format a little bit. And And it might be something that, for example, in Phil's team, they might have to have a bit more of a focus on specific special skills within the open sessions, but showing all the different specialized skills. So business data, for example, referencing different elements might work well within the open session format. But luckily for us, it wasn't too much of an issue. But I hope that makes sense. So you can kind of pick and choose the different elements of the session that you want to focus on, and put other things into it as relevant. So if there is a special skill that you need to attract from people, you can incorporate that into the open session.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Francis, and thank you, Phil, as well, for your presentation too. Time to wrap things up, I think, and so thank you to both our presenters, and thank you for all the questions that we've had. So this is coming to the end of breakout session 3. Once you leave here, you have the opportunity to go to the lounge to carry on the discussion. Please do visit our sponsor booths and carry on networking and talking to the other delegates and our sponsors. Next up, we have our silver sponsor presentation, Adam, Matthew and Any Book. Please do go along and listen to what they have to say. It's really important to hear from our sponsors as they help us to run things on this fantastic platform. And then after that, we have our final panel session, which should be really interesting. Opportunities still available to submit questions if you have any questions for that. And that will be the last event of the day. If you click on the agenda, you can see those links and also see how to submit questions. So thank you, everybody. Please do enjoy the rest of the conference.